You're standing in a warehouse bathroom, staring at your reflection in a mirror, someone bolted to the wall with 2 screws and a prayer. Your knuckles are split. Your left eye is starting to close. There is a man outside this door with a clipboard who is about to call your name for a fight that will be watched by 300 people who have all placed money on the outcome. Most of that money is not on you. To understand how you got here, we need to go back to the beginning. Level 1. The invitation. It starts with a bad night. Not a dramatic bad night. Not a crisis. Just the specific, grinding kind of bad night that belongs to a man in his early 30s who has a job he doesn't hate enough to quit, and an apartment he doesn't love enough to decorate, and a social life that consists mostly of the same 4 people at the same 2 bars talking about the same things they were talking about 2 years ago. You're at one of those bars on a Wednesday, drinking something you ordered without thinking, watching a game you don't care about on a screen above the bottles. And a man sits down 2 stools away who has the kind of stillness that makes you notice him immediately. Not big in a performed way. Big in the way of someone who has never needed to prove it. His name is Carver. He orders water. He watches the same game you're watching with the same complete absence of investment. You talk for maybe 40 minutes. About nothing. About everything that nothing is made of. The city, the work, the low-frequency hum of existing in a life that is technically fine and somehow completely insufficient. He listens the way people listen when they're actually interested rather than waiting for their turn to speak. At the end of the night, he puts a folded piece of paper on the bar between your glasses. Friday, midnight. Come alone. Tell nobody. You laugh. He doesn't. You go. Of course you go. You are 32 years old, and the most interesting thing that has happened to you this month is a parking ticket. The address is a meatpacking facility 20 minutes outside the city center where the roads stop having names and start having numbers. The parking lot has 40 cars in it and no lights. You follow the sound, which is the low compressed sound of a crowd trying to be quiet and not quite managing it. Down a concrete staircase, through a door held open by a man the size of a refrigerator who looks at your face and nods without speaking. The basement is larger than it has any right to be. Industrial lighting aimed at a square of concrete floor that has been cleared of everything except 2 men and the circle of people watching them. No ring. No referee. A man with a clipboard at the edge who seems to be the only official presence. The crowd is mixed in a way that surprises you. Construction workers and men in nice watches and women who clearly know exactly what they came to see. This is not a dive bar brawl. This is something that has been organized by people who know what they're doing. You watch for fights. You drive home at 2 in the morning with your hands buzzing on the wheel. You go back the next Friday. And the one after that. You are a spectator. The club has no problem with spectators. Spectators pay the door, keep their mouths shut, and create the atmosphere that makes the whole thing work. Your name is on no list. You are connected to nothing. You are a man in a crowd who has discovered, quietly and without announcement, that this is the only hour of his week that feels completely real. Level 2. The first fight. Carver asks you on your 6th visit if you want to step in. Not as a challenge. The way you'd ask someone if they want to try a dish you ordered. Casual enough that the weight of what he's offering doesn't land until after you've already said yes. The man they match you with is 38, 5'9", and has been doing this for 7 years. You find out the 7 years afterward. During the fight itself, what you know is that he is faster than you, more economical than you, and entirely unimpressed by anything you attempt for the first 90 seconds. He puts you on the floor twice. The second time you look up at the pipes running along the ceiling, and the crowd noise sounds like it's coming from another room. The extraordinary thing is what's happening in your head, which is nothing. For 4 minutes, there is no apartment, no job, no ambient low-grade disappointment of a life proceeding on schedule toward outcomes you didn't specifically choose. There is just a man, a problem, and your body's attempt to solve it. The clarity is almost medical. You can feel your heartbeat in your fingertips. The entire rest of your existence has been reduced to 0, and the 0 is a relief. You lose. Clearly. By any measure. You come back Tuesday. Carver finds you a trainer named Osman who works out of a gym above a laundromat and doesn't ask questions beyond the technical ones. Where are you dropping your right hand? Why are you stepping back instead of cutting angles? He communicates in corrections rather than conversations, and the corrections are delivered with an efficiency that tells you he has done this for people whose reasons for being there he has also chosen not to investigate. Within 6 weeks, you have hand technique that belongs to someone who has been doing this for years. Within 3 months, you win your first fight. Not elegantly, not decisively, but the man across from you is on the floor, and you are not. The woman next to Carver at the edge of the circle nods once when it's done. Her name is Mara. She is one of 3 people who run the financial side of the operation, and her single nod, you will come to understand, is the equivalent of a standing ovation from anyone else. You go home that night and eat everything in your refrigerator and sleep for 10 hours and wake up feeling like a person who has a reason to be alive on a Tuesday, which is more than you could have said 6 months ago. Your friend Tess notices you've changed. She says it at dinner, the way she says things, directly, without apology, watching your face for the reaction. She says you seem present, like you're actually here instead of processing somewhere slightly behind your eyes. You tell her you've been working out. She gives you the look she gives when she knows you're technically telling the truth and strategically leaving most of it out. She doesn't push. This is one of the things you love about Tess. It will also be one of the things that makes keeping her outside this world increasingly difficult to justify. Level 3. The Inner Circle. 8 months in, Carver takes you through a different door. The room behind it contains Mara and 2 men. Dex, who manages the fighters and speaks in complete sentences that never contain more information than the situation requires. And a man everyone calls the Greek, who is responsible for the external relationships, the money that comes in from people who are not in the room, the arrangements with other operations in other cities, the specific category of problems that don't get solved by having a conversation. The Greek has been in 3 federal investigations and has never been charged with anything. He mentions this the way other people mention their college degree. The club is not what you thought it was. You thought it was a basement and a circle and a clipboard. It is that, and it is also 2 other locations, and a card structure with tiered fights and a separate economy for the serious bouts, and relationships with people in this city and others that constitute something closer to an organization than an event. The basement was the public-facing layer. What sits behind it has the internal logic of a business, revenue streams, operational security, a hierarchy with defined roles, and a clear chain of accountability. Mara explains where you fit into this with the same tone she'd use to explain a contract. You are good enough to fight on the real card. The real card pays real money. The real card also means you are inside the operation rather than adjacent to it, which is a different legal and personal position that she names directly because Mara, you are learning, believes in clarity as a risk management strategy. You take 4 days to decide. You run the route you always run. You sit in your apartment. You think about the 47 seconds of nothing in your first fight and the 10 seconds of nothing when Mara nodded, and what it means that those are the 2 clearest memories of the past year. You call Tess and talk for an hour about things that have nothing to do with any of this. Her voice has the quality of a reference point, a fixed star. When you hang up, you know what you're going to do, and you know that the fact of knowing means you've probably already decided. You take the card. Level 4. The fixed fight. The card fights are a different species. The preparation is serious. The opponents are serious. The money moving through the room on fight night is serious in the way that makes the air feel different, heavier, like the atmosphere before a weather event. You win 4 straight. Not easily. The 4th fight takes 11 minutes and costs you 2 cracked ribs and a month of sleeping in a specific position that Osmond diagrams for you on a piece of paper. But you win, and winning on the card means something in the room, and meaning something in the room means that your relationship with the operation has become structural rather than transactional. The Greek comes to you before your 5th fight. He explains the situation the way you'd explain a business model to someone new to the industry. Certain nights, the financial architecture of an event requires a known outcome. Not always, not often, but specifically, the fighter who cooperates with a known outcome is compensated at a rate that reflects the additional value they are providing to the operation. He is not asking you to embarrass yourself. He is describing a professional arrangement between people who understand how the economics of the thing actually function. You ask if you can think about it. He says take all the time you need. He says it in the voice of someone who has said it before and knows how it ends. The problem is that you know how it ends too. You've known since he started talking. The money is not the problem. The actual problem is that the 47 seconds of nothing that started all of this was real specifically because it wasn't arranged. The absence of outcome was the point. A fight with a known result is not a fight. It is a performance with better lighting than theater and considerably higher medical bills. You agree anyway. The envelope is thicker than usual. You sit in your car in the parking lot for a long time. The weight of the money feels nothing like the weight of the wins. That's what nobody tells you about the first cooperative outcome. It's not guilt that gets you. It's the very specific grief of having traded the real thing for the money, and knowing with complete certainty that you made a choice and can't unchoose it. Tess asks at dinner that week if everything is okay. You say yes. She looks at you the way she looks at things she's not sure are structurally sound. She doesn't push. You eat. You split the check. She hugs you goodbye, and you hold it a second longer than usual, because you know something she doesn't, and the knowing has made her presence feel both more necessary and more dangerous than it used to. Level 5. The walls. The police come on a morning in March. 2 detectives. Plainclothes. At your door at 7:45 with the practiced politeness of people who have done this enough times to know that politeness is a more effective tool than pressure at this stage. They mention a name, a fighter from a different circuit who had a loose financial connection to the Greeks' external arrangements. They mention a date. They mention a location. They are not accusing you of anything. They are gathering information related to an ongoing investigation, and they appreciate you taking the time. You tell them you don't know what they're referring to. You thank them for their time. You close the door and stand in your kitchen for 3 minutes without moving. Carver calls before you've reached for your phone. The organization already knows. Of course it does. He tells you to come to an address you haven't been to before. You drive there and find Mara and the Greek in a room that has been chosen for the specific quality of not being any of the usual rooms. The conversation is careful, measured, and unambiguous. A fighter named Solano who worked adjacent to their operation has become the center of a larger investigation. Several names have appeared in the course of that investigation. Yours is one of them. Lawyers have been arranged for the inner circle. Cooperation with the investigation in any form would be a significant problem for everyone. The Greek says this last part quietly, looking at something past your shoulder rather than at you, which is more frightening than if he'd looked directly at you. You get your own lawyer without telling anyone. Her name is Bryn. She charges $400 an hour and has the manner of someone who has seen every version of this situation and is mildly interested in the specific features of yours. She tells you that your exposure depends entirely on what the investigation can establish and what you're willing to say. She uses the word willing carefully. She is already understanding the shape of the position you're in without you having to spell it out. Tess comes over that Saturday without being invited. She brings food. She sits in your kitchen and doesn't ask questions, just exists in your space with the quiet competence of someone who knows sometimes what's needed is company, not conversation. After an hour, she says, "Whatever it is, you can tell me when you're ready. I'm not going anywhere." She says it once. She goes home at 9, and you sit at your kitchen table until midnight trying to figure out how you explain to a person who has been your fixed star for 8 years that you have spent the last year and a half becoming a different kind of person in a world that has now arrived at your door. The detectives come back. More questions. A different texture to the politeness. Firmer now. The way furniture feels different when it's bolted to the wall. They know more than they did in March. You can tell by the questions they don't ask, the ones they're saving. Your name has traveled closer to the center of their picture. Level 6. The Reckoning. You call Bryn on a Sunday. You tell her everything. The card, the cooperative outcomes, the Greeks' external arrangements, the structure of the operation as you understand it. The things you know for certain, and the things you were present for without fully understanding what you were present for. It takes 4 hours. She makes notes in handwriting you can't read from across the table. She is quiet for a long time when you finish. Then she says, "The question is not whether you cooperate. You're going to cooperate. The question is how, and what you get for it, and what you're willing to put in the room." The negotiation with the investigation takes 3 months. You give them the financial structure. You give them the cooperative outcome arrangement and the specific nights it operated and the chain of who knew and who directed and who collected. You give them the Greeks' external relationships as far as you have direct knowledge of them. You hold one line, privately and completely. Carver, the man who handed you a piece of paper on a bar and changed the direction of your life, did it without knowing it would end here. And the distance between his culpability and the Greeks is the distance between a door and what's behind it. Bryn doesn't ask you to cross that line. She works with the shape of what you've given her and shapes it into something the prosecutor's office finds acceptable. The club comes down. The Greek faces 8 counts and pleads to 4. Mara cooperates fully and receives a suspended sentence and a fine that is, by the financial scale of what she managed, almost insulting. Dex disappears, not dramatically, just stops being reachable by anyone who's looking for him, which is the most organized thing you've seen him do. Carver takes a plea to a minor charge and receives community service and 2 years probation. He calls you once after sentencing. The call lasts 90 seconds. He says he knew the door he was opening when he handed you that piece of paper. He says he's not sorry he did. You don't know what to do with that, so you file it somewhere you can look at later when you have more distance. You receive a suspended sentence. 2 years probation. A record that will exist on background checks for the next decade and require a specific conversation in certain professional contexts. Your cooperation is noted by the court. The judge, a man in his 60s who has clearly administered this particular lesson before, says something about the difference between making a bad decision and making a series of bad decisions and what distinguishes the two. You write it down on a receipt in your jacket pocket and find it 3 weeks later doing laundry. Tess is in the hallway outside the courtroom when you come out. She is not supposed to be there in any logistical sense. You didn't tell her the date. You didn't give her the address. tracked it down herself because she is the kind of person who finds out the things she needs to find out. She looks at you for a moment. Then she says, "Okay, what do you need? Not what happened, not I told you so, not I don't understand any of this. Just, what do you need?" It is the most efficient expression of love you have ever received, and you stand in a courthouse hallway and feel it like a physical force. What you need, it turns out, is a meal and several hours of talking about things that have nothing to do with the past 2 years. She provides both. You eat somewhere with real tablecloths because she decided the occasion required it. You drink wine. You talk about her work, her sister's new apartment, a book she's been reading that she thinks you'd find irritating in the specific way you find good books irritating. You don't talk about the club. Not yet. There will be a time for that conversation, and this is not it. This is the conversation that exists on the other side of it. The one where the two of you begin the project of rebuilding the version of your friendship that existed before you started keeping a second life in a warehouse basement. It takes time. The probation check-ins are every 2 weeks for the first year. The record follows you in the ways records follow people. There are 3 conversations with potential employers that end in a specific silence after the background check comes back. You learn to have the explanation prepared and to deliver it without apology. Here is what happened. Here is what I did. Here is what I understand now that I didn't then. Osmond still trains you, not for anything organized. Just because the body is something you've learned to take seriously, and Osmond appears to find your continued presence either acceptable or not worth the effort of discouraging. You spar Tuesday and Thursday mornings, 6 to 8. Go to work smelling like the laundromat downstairs, which Tess informs you is not a neutral smell. The 47 seconds from your first fight are still there. Still the clearest proof you have found that it is possible to be fully present in your own life if the situation demands it. The path you took to find them cost more than it should have, but the seconds themselves were real. They happened, and they are yours. Most days that distinction is enough. Some days you're still working out the math.